All praise, Lord, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith. I always count it truly a blessing each single time that I come before you to preach the word of God, and never to count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to go right into today's lesson, and it is a question that was answered or asked about through Genesis 3:15, and I'll just read the question. Is it possible to explain Genesis 3:15, Satan's seed and Eve's seed, the man who was to deliver the seed? Hold on, excuse me. It says, the man who is to deliver the seed. I'm confused. Okay, so that's understandable. So let's read it. And it says, well, first of all, I want to pick it up at verse 14 real quick, just to give you a backdrop. What's happened is this is man sinned, or when not keeping it commanded, he communed with Satan. Adam and Eve did, and therefore judgment is coming. And so when it gets to the serpent's judgment, it says in verse 14, and the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Okay, so now, first of all, who is this serpent? Just to clear this up, let's go to Revelation. We're gonna go in Revelation, the 12th chapter. Okay, and let's read it. It says in Revelation, the 12th chapter, and we want to pick it up at verse 9. It says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Okay, so that's who the serpent is. So we know who this is. Now, it's not talking about, because you hear people saying that the serpent was the literal talking snake that walked upright, all kind of foolishness. Is just referring to Satan. Then it says, upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Now, peace to you, Willie. What's the dust? Let's pick that up. Let's see. Let's find out. We're gonna pick it up in Peter, and let's see. Give me one moment, please. Let's go to let's see. 1 Peter 5. It says in verse 8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Okay, so now when it's talking about he's gonna eat dust, that's referring to his position and what he's doing. Okay, he's destroying man. Okay, now it also says something else. Now we can get to verse 15, because we know who the serpent is and what he's doing. Then it says, and I will put enmity, okay, or this hatred between, it says, thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Okay, so now what's that talking about? Who is the woman? Who is the woman's seed? We know who the serpent is. And we're going to find out who his seed is as well. But now let's go back to Revelation, the 12th chapter, and find this out. Revelation, the 12th chapter. Revelation, the 12th chapter, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. It says, because who is the woman? It says, and verse 1, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now, this woman is talking about Israel. That's what it's talking about. Okay, so you read in Genesis, the 37th chapter, where Joseph, patriarch Joseph, has a dream, and he has a dream that the sun and the moon and 11 stars made obeisance to him. And then his father kind of rebuked him and said, that, it was like, shall I and my mother and thy mother and thy brethren bow unto thee? Because that's who that's alluding to. Okay. So now, just to read that to you, in Genesis the 37th chapter, he said in verse 9, and he dreamed yet another dream and told it to his brethren and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to him. He was a 12 star. Okay. So that's talking about the nation. And he told it to his father and his brother, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? All right. So now when you read in Revelation 12:1, you should know what it's talking about. So it says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. That's talking about Israel, the nation. Then it says, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. See, out of this woman came the seed, the child. Who was the child? None other than Jesus. Now, what was the travail at birth? Let's pick it up at verse 4. Well, keep reading. Verse 3. And there appeared another one in heaven, and behold, a great dragon, a great red dragon. We already know that's Satan. It says, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and they cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered. When did that take place? Let's go read that in Matthew. Oftentimes, again, what's going on in the spiritual realm, you can see it in the physical. This is picking up in Matthew, the 3rd chapter. And I'm going to pick it up at verse, let's see, excuse me, Matthew, the 3rd chapter, or the 2nd chapter, excuse me. And we want to pick it up at verse 7. It says, then Herod, when he privately called the wise men, those are what they call the magi, right? That it's these wise men, and he inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. Okay, so he wanted to know, when this was going to take place. Let's pick it up at verse 16. Then Herod, because he wanted to know, he talked about coming to worship the child, but he didn't want to come to worship the child. The man was a megalomaniac. When he heard it was a king of the Jews born, he to take strike. He wanted to kill him. He killed his own family members because he figured they were a threat. So he felt the same way about this one. So it said, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth and set forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof from 2 years old and under, just like in the days of Moses, because he's a prophet like unto Moses, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise man. Peace to you, brother Isaiah. So he's doing this trying to kill the Messiah. So when you read it in Revelation, the 12th chapter, in verse 4, where it says, and the dragon stood before I'm in the middle of the verse, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. That's the seed of the woman. And that's talking about the Messiah. Okay. And she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. We know he went to be with the Father, and when he come back, he gonna rule. That's what that's talking about. Okay. So now let's go read Genesis, the 3rd chapter one more time and read something else, because we want to find out who's the serpent's seed. So it says, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. Okay. So now there's enmity there, and it says the serpent has a seed. Now this is not talking about him dealing with women and having a seed in that regard, but it's a spiritual thing. Let's go to John, the 8th chapter. John, the 8th chapter. Peace to you, brother Tom. John, the 8th chapter. John, the 8th chapter, verse 41. Now here, the Messiah is talking to the people who are coming against him. His own people are coming him. The religious factions, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, the scribes were constantly coming against him. And he says something to him. He says In verse 41, he says, ye do the deeds of your father. Then said they to him, we be not born of fornication. We have one father, even God. Jesus said unto them, if God were your father, ye would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do ye not understand my speech? Even because ye cannot hear my word. Then he tells them who their father is. He said, because he have a seed. Satan has a seed. He says, ye are of your father, the devil. And the lust of your father will ye do. He was a murderer from the beginning. He started the murdering campaign in the Garden of Eden with the deception. Thou shalt not surely die from the day that thou eatest thereof. The Lord told, we know who that was Jesus they were talking to before he's manifesting in flesh. He says, in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die, right? Of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat of it. He said, thou shalt not surely die. He said, we know that your eyes shall be open and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. He adulterated the truth with a lie. It was true that they would know good and evil, but they were going to die. Okay, so he told them, ye are of your father, the devil, and the lust of your father will ye do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there's no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. Peace to you, Brother Leo. It's good to see you. So now, and peace to everybody that's listening. So now he said, your father is the devil. See, that's his seed. It's not like he's sleeping with some woman and bringing forth seed. It's spiritual. Okay. 1 John, the 3rd chapter and verse 8. He that committed sin is of the devil. That's your father. That's why he told him, ye of your father, the devil. Right? They talking about we not of fornication. No, y'all are that wicked one. They're that wicked one. Even when you look at the sons of God and the daughters of men in Genesis around 6th chapter, that's two different lineages, spiritual lineages. One is following you, a son of God, you following the Most High. Them daughters of men were following that wicked one. He that committed sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from when? The beginning. Again, that murdering campaign started in the beginning. He's a liar and the father of it. For this purpose, the Son of God was manifested. So that's why that seed of the woman had to come into play. That seed of the woman had to come into the world. That seed of the woman had to come and redeem you. He that committed sin is of the devil, for the devil sinned from the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Okay? That's what he came to do. Now, but let's go back to Genesis, the 3rd chapter again, because it said, let's read what it said the Satan was going to do. This is Genesis, the 3rd chapter, and the 15th verse. It says, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Now we're gonna talk about the heel first and then get to the head. Because when it's saying thou shalt bruise his heel, it's talking about what Satan is going to do. Satan is going to bruise thy heel. What does that mean? It means that he was going to die. Who? The Messiah. Let's look at it. Let's look at it. This is Psalms, because we're going to find out even how it took place. Psalms, the 41st chapter. See, this is foretold that this will happen. How did it take place that Satan would bruise his heel? It's an expression meaning, yeah, it's like you gonna take one. Like it's like if you got a fight, you got two men fighting, and one hit one, it's like, whoa. But see, Satan gonna be knocked out. Before we get to the knockout, you gonna see the punch that was strong. This is Psalms 41. We're gonna pick it up at verse 9. Because how did he bruise his heel? It says, yea, mine own familiar friend. Now the psalmist David is prophesying of not of himself, but of the Messiah. What was to happen to him? He said, yea, mine own familiar friend, in whom I trusted, which did eat of my bread, have lifted up his heel against me. Now, what does he mean? That the one that I eat my bread, who is he talking about? Let's go to Gospel according to John. We can hold our finger in Psalms. We'll read it again just so we can have some understanding. But the gospel according to John, I want to pick up chapter 13 and verse 18. He says, I speak, this is Messiah saying, he said, I speak not of you all. I know whom I have chosen, but that the scripture may be fulfilled. He that eateth bread with me hath lifted up his heel against me. Now I tell you before it come, that when it come to pass, ye may believe that I am he. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that receiveth whomsoever I send receiveth me. He that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. Okay, let's skip down a little bit. In verse 23, it says, now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples whom Jesus loved. Simon Peter therefore beckoned to him that he should ask who it should be of whom he spake. He then lying on Jesus' breast said unto him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, he it is to whom I shall give a sop when I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Now listen to what it says here. Now after the sop, Satan entered into him. Then said Jesus unto him, that thou doest, do quickly. What is he talking about? He entered into him. He was being influenced by Satan. And back to Psalms 41 and 9. Yea, mine own familiar friend in whom I trusted, which did eat of my bread, have lifted up his heel against me. See, he said, do what you gonna do? Do it fast. Do it quickly. What was he trying to do? Luke, the 22nd chapter. He was going to betray him. And that betrayal led to the Messiah's death. But we know he didn't stay long. He would not suffer his Holy One to see corruption. He was in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. But that was the blow. Pow! He died a horrific death. To the point where it was so bad, he knew it was going to be bad. He said, oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. That's why it was a horrific, it's comparable to a modern lynching. That's why when he was nailed on the cross, he said, Ele, Ele, lama sabachthani, it is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? But Luke, the 22nd chapter, it says in verse 1, now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover, because he died on the Passover. That's when he was betrayed to be crucified. Just to clear that up, let's go to Matthew, the 26th chapter. Still hold your finger there. We're going to pick it up in Matthew 26 and verse 1. And it said, it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these things, he said unto his disciples, you know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. See, he bruised our heel was the betrayal. So it says now back in Luke 22 and verse 1, now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover, and the chief priests and scribes sought how they might kill him, for they feared the people. Then what happened? Verse 3, then Satan entered Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12. And he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray him unto them. Who is he talking to? The same ones ye of your father, the devil. You understand? So what Satan did, he was trying to kill the Messiah in the days of Herod. Here he influences Judas. And it goes down. So he bruises his heel. Let's go to let's go to just to show you, and you know how it ended. This is John the 19th chapter and verse 28. Because here he dies on the cross. It said, after this, Jesus, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, saith, I thirst. Now there was set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar and put it upon hyssop and put it to his mouth. That was the stupefying concoction or liquor that they would give. It was stupefy you, make y'all combobulated. He says, In verse 30, John writes, when Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished, and he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. Okay, so he gave up the breath of life, and he died. But we understand again, after 3 days and 3 nights, he was resurrected. Now going back to Revelation. Let's go back to Revelation real quick with the 12th chapter. Matter of fact, let's pick it up at Acts, then go to Revelation. Let's go to Acts, the first chapter. Because we know he appeared unto his disciples after his resurrection. Acts, the first chapter, and verse 9. Well, let's pick it up at verse 8. He said, but ye shall receive power after that the Holy Ghost has come upon you. I'm in Acts 1 and 8. And ye shall be witness unto me both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. Hold your finger there. Let's go to Revelation, the 12th chapter. Revelation, the 12th chapter. Just to put it all together. Revelation, the 12th chapter. Revelation, the 12th chapter, and verse 5. And she, talking about the woman, brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with the rod of iron. That's when he comes back. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Right? So now what did they see? They saw him going up into heaven. In verse 9, and when he had spoken these things while they beheld, he was taken. Acts 1 and 9. And when he had spoken these things while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel. These are angels. Understand that. Which also said, ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. Then returned they unto Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is from Jerusalem a 7 days journey. And when he comes back, his feet are going to, you read in Zechariah, his feet are going to go right to that Mount of Olives. But that's why I said he was caught up unto God to the Father's throne. That's why he tells you in Revelation, if you go to Revelation, the 3rd chapter. In the 21st verse, that's why he says, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne. This is Jesus talking, even as I also overcame and sat down with my Father in his throne. That's why you read in Psalms 110th division, where it says, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. So we know where he's at, right? We know he recovered from that. He was resurrected. He knew before going to be crucified, he was going to be resurrected. That's why he told him in John the 17th chapter, he prayed, he said, oh, now, Father, glorify me with the glory I had with thee before the world was. So he knew what was going to happen. So back to Genesis, this is the 3rd chapter. So his heel was bruised. But Satan's head is going to be bruised. This is Genesis, the 3rd chapter, and the 15th verse. Again, it says, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. Let me clear something up too. Let's go back to Revelation 12 before we clear it up, because we know who the seed is, but it's also a reference to a seed here as well. I just want to clear this up. Revelation the 12th, we didn't read it. Revelation the 12th chapter, since I'm thinking about it, because he goes in from 12 unto the 12 and 6. In the 6th chapter, he talks about the place of safety during the time of great tribulation. He says, and the woman fled into the woman is Israel, and the woman fled into the wilderness where she had the place prepared of God that they should feed her there 1,203 score days, 1,260 days, times the dividing of times, 40 and 2 months. That's the time of the great tribulation. So now let's skip down a little bit, because he says something that might be confusing. I want to clear it up. It says, in verse 13, and when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which had brought forth the man child. Okay, so that's the seed, like singular. Okay, it says, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness into a place where she is nourished for a time. That's 1 year. Times that's 2 years and a half of time. 1 + 2 is 3 and a half years from the face of the serpent. Now it says something, and the serpent was cast out of his mouth waters of flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood, and the earth helped the woman and the earth opened her mouth. So when Israel's running into the place of safety to be saved in the great tribulation, it's going to be something with water. Same thing when they went through the Red Sea. I'm not saying the exact same thing is happening. What I'm saying is something with water. Then it says, it swallowed. So it says, and the earth helped the woman, and the earth, I'm in verse 16, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, angry, enmity, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Now, what's that talking about? That's talking about, it says, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. That's talking about spiritual, like those who are, just like how you can be a child of the devil. You got that seed of the woman, that one child that came forth, but also you got those that are following him, sons of God. He went to make war with them, to that keep the commandments, that believe on the Messiah. Okay, so I want to clear that up, because when it's saying seed there. But now let's go back to Genesis, the 3rd chapter, verse 15. It said, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Now let's go to when Satan has his head bruised. Let's go to Revelation, the 20th chapter. Because like I said, yeah, he took one. He was crucified. He was betrayed, the Messiah was. But he's going to get a knockout blow to Satan. And they know that. That's why I said he has but a short time. That's even when his minion, when the Messiah came to one who was plagued with Satan's minion, he said, we know who you are. Hast thou come to torment us what before the time? Because at that time, that's going to be when he has his head bruised. It's going to be over for Satan. This is Revelation, the 20th chapter, and verse 10. And this is after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. It says, and the devil, verse 10, and the devil, Revelation 20:10, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. That's the knockout blow, brothers and sisters. That's the bruising of the head. Not the heel, the bruising of the head. Now let's go last place. Let's go to Romans, the 16th chapter and the 20th verse. Romans, the 16th chapter and the 20th verse, because we're looking for this time. We're looking for this time. It says, and the God of peace shall bruise Satan under your feet shortly. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. Amen. It's a short time. All praise to the Most High, sisters. I pray. I'm glad that I'm thankful that it was clear and edifying. So yeah, we're looking for that time. That's gonna happen. Okay. So the woman again, the one that brought forth the man child is none other than the Messiah. The Satan's seed are those that follow him. Okay. We saw the influence of, and we saw how the Messiah, or that one that was the seed, had his heel bruised. We read in the Psalms 41, and we saw what Judas did in betraying him. That was his familiar friend, one of his disciples, one who walked with him, one he talked with, one who ate with him. All the while he knowing he gonna betray me. That's something, boy. So it's something to know when you're going to die. It's something to know how you're going to die. And it's something to walk with somebody who you know is going to betray you. But that's what he did. And he did it for us. Death couldn't hold him. He was free from the shackles of death after 3 days and 3 nights. I will not suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. He said, that will not leave my soul in hell, nor suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. His body didn't corrupt. 3 days and 3 nights, he was out of there. And he's going to bruise Satan's head in the time to come. So with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we're at the House of the Faith meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. If you've been edified through the ministry and would like to leave a donation, you can go to our website. Again, that's www.israelteach.org. 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry. We do not get paid. It goes for operating costs and everything that we need to keep going with the ministry. And we are thankful for those who have donated, because we are a small congregation and your donations mean a lot. So we truly appreciate that. And also want to remind everybody that if you are interested, we have Bible study at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. How on Friday, every Friday night, we do that on Zoom. So I post the if you come to the Israel Teach YouTube channel, I'll post the meeting ID. If you would like to come in and ask questions, you can, but it's on Zoom. It's not on YouTube, and we can go into depth and talk. And like I said, it's been going well. So if you have questions, you can do that. Lord willing, can answer them to the best of my ability. And with that, brothers and sisters, it's always my prayer that you were edified.